Hello and welcome to a War Elephant Podcast Editor's Pick New Year's Eve live stream. A chance for Kristine and I to just chat about this year. And if you want to join in, let us know in the chat and we'll try and get you the link. We'll ask you a couple questions. It'll be just a very relaxed evening. So, Kristine, New Year's Eve 2020 going into 2021. What's going on for you?
Technical difficulties, apparently.
Well, what would any live stream be without technical difficulties?
I just heard you twice overlapping.
Oh.
So I think you just asked me what's going on for me.
Yeah.
Okay. It was a little hard to understand because I was getting two different audio feeds at the same time, not in sync. So technical difficulties are definitely number one for what's going on with me. Well, I'm starting a new job in January, which I've been preparing for a couple of months. And so I'll be teaching, so I'm pretty excited about that. Tonight, I'm just going to be hanging around home playing board games with my dad and my significant other.
That
How about
is
you?
a great tradition. I will also be playing board and card games with my family. Tim Soderman says there's not enough fire in the fireplace. Tim, you should totally join us. And as I've mentioned many times, you don't have to have a camera. You can join us with just a profile pic, or even the Google profile with just a circle in the little thing. So you don't have to show your face if you want to join. We just want to chat with whoever's up for talking.
I don't know what. Tim, are you being sarcastic?
Almost certainly.
Yeah, it's the setting on the gas thing doesn't work all that well, so it gets a little excited. I'm going to be roasting by the end of the podcast, probably.
We must be elegant or die.
Well, we're in the middle of remodeling here, and so right now there is no floor at all, and we just got done chiseling out all of the tile in front of the fireplace. We should be putting in brand new floors next week.
Are you putting it in, or you have contractors?
No, my father and I are putting it in.
Because Kristine and her father are Minnesotans, and they do not spend money if they can do it themselves.
Well, that's not exactly true. So we have these beautiful windows because I live on a lake. And of course, a lake home has to have beautiful windows. But we tried to rebuild them ourselves. And they were very ornate, and the woodworking wasn't a problem. However, we ran into trouble with the panes. Instead of having a standard double pane system that you would see today with the vacuum in between two separate panes, they were actually custom blown double pane windows that had been blown and then sealed, vacuumed and sealed, one pane of glass that had two sides, like glass balloons.
That sounds strangely beautiful, but also almost irreplaceable.
Yes, it is irreplaceable. And so we tried to see about getting someone to remake panes, and it just turned into such a pain in the neck. And then recrafting all of the woodwork was just not happening. So each window frame has beveled pieces, one laid on top of another. So it turned into a lot of work. And so I guess we tried to do it in Minnesota fashion and do it ourselves, but we're winding up hiring someone to put in new windows.
Remodeling in general is complicated. I think my parents and my sister are planning to do that in the next year. And I did a little bit of help with the remodeling of my parents' house when we sold it last summer. So I did help with
hush,
landscaping. Ooh, show the dog. Show the dog.
Show the dog. So we have someone coming home right now. Hello, Micah.
Look at that dog.
Sorry about that. It was just great timing.
And so I helped with remodeling, helped with painting and stuff to get it sellable. So, I mean, even that little couple weeks that we worked was quite hectic. So I imagine doing a significant remodel on something you want to actually live in can be challenging indeed.
Well, we've already replaced the floor in the living room, and we're going to replace all of the carpets with hardwood. So I'm pretty excited. But it's been a multi-year project.
Oh, I imagine. And so that's something I've always wondered. Do you prefer vacuuming or sweeping?
Hard floors all the way.
Okay.
Vacuuming is, first of all, it's a tedious task, and it takes longer.
I don't know. I find sweeping pretty tedious too.
And if you look at carpets, no matter how well you vacuum, no matter how expensive your vacuum is, you never actually get all the dust and dirt out of them. Plus, they're very child and pet unfriendly.
How so?
We have white carpets because the
Oh.
person who sold this house to us installed all new white carpets when they sold it to us. And of course, we're Minnesotans, so we can't just get rid of them because they're new, right? Well,
That's what
old
my
white
parents did
carpets-
with the most hideous beige carpets that we got in the last house for 25 years. So I very much understand.
Yeah, I think that's what they're like, a very off-white, just barely
Really?
off-white. No pattern. They looked beautiful when we moved in, but years of having pets, dogs, cats, children around, not so beautiful anymore.
And
Tim loves fire, and more fire is needed.
well, we all need fire. St. Augustine said that fire is one of the things that helps us know more about the problem of evil, because you have blackness and then you have fire, and without blackness you can't understand the beauty of fire. So I have an affection for fire in that theological sense.
You know, I was looking up the history of fire just yesterday. And, oh, hello, Roscoe. Well, second dog is here. And
You
he
should
has a
also
bottle
show
in his
this
mouth.
dog.
Come here, Roscoe. Come here. I will show Roscoe. Okay, I will show Roscoe.
Oh, hello, other dog.
What are you doing, Roscoe? You have a bottle. He has a bottle. He's not supposed to have a bottle.
Oh, right.
Good boy. So now I've got two dogs. But yeah, I was looking up the history of fire. And because I was trying to research into like the history of chemistry. And Roscoe, take that upstairs. Go on. Shoot. Excuse me. Come here. Come here. He wants to sit and juggle it around on the floor. Thank you, Roscoe. Good boy. So anyway, I'm sorry about this.
No, that's kind of the point of this live stream, is that we're trying to be real chill and non-intimidating, so anyone who joins us can be like, well, I'm more put together than Ian is, so that's fine.
No. I sit in front of this fireplace because it's probably the one place in the house that looks put together right now since we're in the middle of remodeling.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, fire, the history of fire. So they'd originally believed that it only dated back about 50 to 60,000 years. But in the last 20 years, archaeological evidence shows that the hominids that were precursors to human beings actually had fire. And it was a major driving force, the anthropologists and archaeologists now believe, in the evolution of hominids, different hominid families, into what we see as modern day Homo sapiens. So there are sites across the world dating back as far as 1.7 million years with fire, and evidence of the controlled use of fire. And it's kind of interesting because if you take any great ape and offer them cooked meat or raw meat, they will always choose cooked meat. So this seems to be something really hardwired into the primate psychology, and it was probably driven by food.
What kind of evidence are they finding? Are they finding like fire pits or?
Yeah, they're finding fire pits along with evidence of charred bones, and even the evidence of smelting goes back much farther than they had thought it did, with the earliest use of iron being from meteors, and it had actually been meteor rocks being smelted into superior weapons that drove the innovation in the field of chemistry.
That reminds me. Are you familiar with Sir Terry Pratchett, the British author?
Yes.
I don't know if you've heard this story, but I want to tell this for our watchers. When Terry Pratchett, who was a writer of fantasy in England, he wrote the Discworld series. When he was knighted, he was one of the literary knights that Queen Elizabeth honored. He decided he wanted to be a knight with a sword. And so he went and found himself a meteor and learned how to smelt and blacksmith enough so he could make his own sword. And I think that's the kind of person you should make into a knight. Is someone who's willing to learn how to make a sword.
Yes, that is very innovative. I really admire innovative people who get out and go do things. Someone turned on the alarm on my dryer. We're now going to get buzzed at every 5 minutes.
All right. Can you hear us, Tim?
Hi, Tim.
I can, yes.
All right.
No.
Hey, all animals love me, okay? You're just going to have to live with that.
They do love you. They love you very loudly.
Yeah, that's a side effect.
So, Tim, we're going to ask all of our guests what was your worst thing that happened this year to you specifically? And what was the best thing?
Well, let's see. I'm getting to move out soon, so that's pretty good.
Indeed.
Yeah, I've got everything all packed up. I just need to go when I get my driver's license renewed. And the worst thing, now that's kind of a toughie there. I guess staying inside more than is good for me, to the point that I had to get a UV light to replace the sun because my window is tiny.
That is indeed a bit disappointing.
And Tim?
Yeah?
When you move, will you get it out more?
Yes, probably.
Awesome. We're counting on you. I don't know if you want to share where vaguely you're moving or not, but I do know. And I just want to say you're going to be our guest for that area.
Okay.
You have to be the War Elephant representative.
Matthias is actually pretty close there, though. He could just, spread his influence like he does everywhere else.
That is true. But
we're talking the editorial branch.
Yes, okay. Yeah.
So what are you looking forward to besides moving for 2021?
Having a job instead of being forced out of it by the government's stupid policies. Yeah.
That is definitely something that I will hope more people get this next year. I think.
Yeah. And it does look like employment is on the rise.
Yeah, that's good.
All right.
Ian, I just wanted to say you're looking too. That new camera is awesome.
Oh, good. It's not much more expensive than the last one I have, but I think that the fact it's about 10 years newer is helping.
Imagine having a camera that doesn't make you look like a potato.
I don't think you look like a
That's very
potato.
racist against potatoes, Tim.
Hey, it's
Yeah,
better
do you
than
have
looking
something
like a
against the
blob.
Irish?
As a quarter Irish who loves my very Irish grandmother, no, not really. However, I do have a problem with the English, and I'm also, part English because reasons. So,
Well, I understand that. I'm half Japanese. Well, not. I'm quarter Japanese, quarter Chinese, and those two countries do not always get along like this.
yeah, no.
Well, you're lucky because self-hatred is very in vogue these days.
That's true. Yes, yeah. Though I'm really not drunk enough to engage with it all that much. Ugh. So, check back with that in like half an hour when I've had more.
All right.
So alcohol is a big part of a lot of people's New Year's celebrations. And I'm thinking with everything being closed this year, this might be one of the record years for low numbers of alcohol-related deaths on the road. I'm making that projection now.
I would agree, yes.
Might be a silver lining.
Well, I would say that traffic has increased a bit, especially since, of course, March or the summer when it was really pretty. Going to work was really easy after a year of going to work through the normal traffic. But I think you're probably right. I think it will slow down quite a bit, the fatalities. But this last week with the blizzard we had in Minnesota, there was certainly a lot of accidents.
Yeah, we had a blizzard here too. Got 6 to 8. No, not. We were supposed to get 6 to 8, but then we ended up with like 9 inches of heavy snow 2 weeks ago, I think. And then, the heavy, the wet, the really good for snow forts, but really bad for your back. And then yesterday or the day before, we got another 6 to 8 of, thankfully, the light powder. But that was great fun.
Yeah, we had that storm here run through here 2 days ago.
What was so weird about the storm was for us in the cities was in the Twin Cities for the non-Minnesotans. There was so much wind that it was often like sideways on hills. So like parts of the hill would be very thin and then parts would be very, very deep. And we took my nephew out sledding on Christmas Day, and that was a very interesting side effect that I hadn't seen much recently.
Now, we got that too. My side of the driveway, I live in a ranch-style duplex. My side of the driveway was the one that ended up with the drifting. So I got to shovel that.
Ah, yes, shoveling. I've decided to keep a shovel in my car so I can just shovel myself out if I get stuck, which has happened a couple times.
Don't forget the kitty litter just in case you get, frozen in too.
I've never needed that. The shovel, yes. My jumper cables I need. I once needed a tow rope, but didn't have it. But fortunately, somebody with a truck came along and had one. So, and that wasn't even my car. I had gone out. A friend had called and she said, "I'm stuck in the ditch out by the airport." That's when I was living up in Grand Forks. And so I drive out there and go to pick her up. And we tried to push her out, and we couldn't push her out of the ditch. And it wasn't even all that like curved. The problem was it was so icy that it was dangerous just getting the car turned around. I think we saw over 50 cars in the ditch in 3 miles. It was horrible. And then we tried to get her out, couldn't get her out. And I had a rope. We tried that rope. We actually needed somebody with like a dually truck who had a really strong rope who finally pulled her out.
Yeah, that sounds like the first few weeks of winter. Or a few days, rather, because everyone's all like, oh no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. I don't need to, practice my driving or, make sure that I know exactly where the road is. And then we all just end up sliding around.
Well, I think this was actually well into winter. It just didn't look so bad outside, but it was sheer ice.
Yeah, the other problem here in the cities was that it had rained just before it started dropping to the blizzard weather. So underneath all the snow was the glare ice.
Yeah, this reminds me, I think last winter, before I had the great idea of moving my van onto the driveway, we have to do alternate side parking because we have enough cars and that we can't all fit on the driveway or in the garage. So the van was out on the street, and we got the heavy wet snow the day before, and then we got lighter snow. But if you step on the heavy wet snow enough that you compact it, it'll freeze down as ice. It's like a single block. And so the van's curbside tires were literally frozen to the ground, that I couldn't move it. And I had to put a little note to make sure that I didn't get a ticket. Because not even the icebreaker, not the kitty litter, nothing would get the van out. And then the next day, I burned rubber and got the van out somehow.
So is kitty litter more effective than salt, or does it do the same kind of... Does it have salt?
It does a different job. Salt is to melt as much as to provide traction. The kitty litter is just to provide the traction, as far as I've ever used it anyway.
All right. Well, Tim, we have another guest, so we shall bid you farewell. But thank you for joining us. I hope you got enough fire from our backdrop.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a good night, you guys.
Thank you for having me on.
Hello, Christian. Welcome to the War Elephant Editor's Pick podcast live stream.
Thank you. I just saw it in the Discord and I wanted to check it out. So yeah. So what made you decide
aboard.
Wait, could you say that again?
I said welcome aboard.
Oh, thanks, Kristine. So what made you decide to have this start this thing?
War Elephant or the podcast?
Is this like just an episode of the podcast?
Sort of. It's our live stream for New Year's Eve.
Oh yeah, because I forgot. I thought I missed this thing because like until you said Central Time, and I live on the East Coast, so.
Well, we're going to ask all of our guests the same question, which is, what were the best and worst things that happened to you this year? Not like in general, just happened to you in your life.
I mean, I turned 18 6 days ago, so that's cool.
Congratulations.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. So, I'm a legal adult now, so. But I still haven't finished high school, so that's
But what about some things that didn't go as well?
This whole pandemic thing.
Well, but what did that look like for you? Were you able to continue going to school, or did it shut it down completely?
The school, like, we've been doing online learning for like 9 months now.
Doesn't sound fun.
And like ever since like I feel like I want to like go out and explore the world, and that's not really a possibility at the moment.
I imagine so.
Yeah.
What's your experience with War Elephant? I assume you're a member of our Discord. I think you messaged me there.
Yeah, I messaged you like 10 minutes ago.
So how'd you find us?
Oh, I've been active on Quora for like 3.5 years, and I decided to get more active on Discord like a month ago, and I'd occasionally peep around you guys.
Yeah. Well, what do you
Excellent.
think of the community that we have both on Quora and Discord? Do you think it gives you new information or new perspectives?
Yeah,
Or
I like the community a lot.
oh, good. I'm glad.
I don't always agree with like the politics of like you guys, but you know what? I do appreciate the community, so that's pretty nice.
Well, that's one of the
Go ahead, Ian.
well, that's one of our biggest goals with both the podcast and the community is we want to have a dialogue between people who don't agree with. So I'm really glad you're here.
Plus, there is no actual official War Elephant politics. There's just a whole lot of different voices who, in general, the War Elephant has a conservative outlook, but the actual politics are really pretty widely spread.
Yeah, I think obviously they're more to the right than to the left for obvious reasons, but there are pretty diverse among them.
And of course, you're one of our junior scouts, which means you can help shape what goes out.
Oh, true. Oh, I'm just like a casual. I just casually peek around. I didn't know you guys had that.
Yep. So we have I should explain. We've got a whole team that helps find content for War Elephant. So of course we have our contributors who are independent writers, who are carefully selected and who kind of do what they want when they want, and we trust their discretion to know when what they're writing fits War Elephant. But then we've got an editorial track which has people who volunteer in the role of scouts, who help find news and articles and different podcasts and things for War Elephant to show on its different platforms to share and to talk about. We have publishers who are people who are entrusted with being able to officially talk about War Elephant. Welcome back, Christian.
Oh, thanks.
And we have editors who oversee the process and will give final approval to what gets published. And finally, the chief editor who oversees all of the publishing and related activities.
I see.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Christian, and I hope to see you around on the community, both on Quora and on Discord. Feel free to message us if you have any questions. We're going to move on to our next guest, but thanks for jumping in.
All right. So it's like, 5 minutes per guest?
That's about it. Yeah.
More or less.
All right. Well, I have my share.
Thank you for coming on. Hi, Winston.
And
hey, everybody.
we have one of our other editors on the War Elephant, and I'm so excited.
Wow. I'm excited to see you too, Winston.
Yep. Glad to be here. Y'all can hear me all right?
Yeah, so let's get
Awesome.
started with our official question, which is what are some of the worst things and some of the best things that happened to you personally this year?
Gee, worst and best things.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't get laid off, which is like, I feel like
That's actually really good.
And worst things. I mean, like, I feel like that's obviously COVID.
But did you get COVID? I mean, I know we've had members of the community that
I mean, like,
got
just
it.
like, in general, I didn't get sick. Nobody in my immediate family got sick. Actually, I know a bunch of people who did get sick, but aside from that, yeah. Aside from
I work in a nursing home, so I actually know quite a few people who got it, unfortunately.
You've probably seen some of the worst of it, Ian.
Yeah, and I personally think that a lot of the worst of it for nursing homes that weren't mismanaged like New York is just the isolation, because people who aren't in great health, if they lose that human contact with visitors, they decline really quickly.
Yeah, it's like pretty dystopian when you think about it. I was actually reading a piece just now about how, like, just in the early days of the outbreak, and you had these people who were on cruise ships, so we know that they were like really big epicenters early on, so they sent all the passengers home, but they kept all the crew on board. So they locked them into the cabins, and they were kind of going like, stir crazy. A lot of them killed themselves. It's really horrible.
Yeah,
that would be the cruise ship from hell.
Yeah.
I mean, I've
I
heard
went on a
things about
vacation
what they did
and
in
became
China
a
too.
sickness quarantine.
It's like he came because like these cabins are really small in the cruise ships, and they weren't allowed to see any of their families for like months and months, if at all. And so they were just like, but he couldn't go home either because all these countries were like the countries that he came from were putting in lockdowns. Sort of like I think like part of the human cost of COVID that people we may not have been thinking about enough, but also like the human cost of like all the lockdowns and just the disease itself. And a lot of it's like seems really invisible. Horrible.
So,
Yeah,
what
I
are some
lost-
things you're looking forward to in 2021, Winston?
Vaccination.
You don't need both.
Mm-hmm.
Do you prefer Moderna or Pfizer or I heard there's another one that just got approved for June or
AstraZeneca,
something?
the British one, and it's
the Oxford.
Yep. And honestly, like the one I prefer is the one that I can get fastest.
Makes sense. Yeah, I just found out that I think all the elder people in my nursing home who consent. Obviously, we're not going to force people who don't want the vaccine to get it, but everyone who wants it at my nursing home will be able to get it, which I'm very thankful for.
Mm-hmm.
And I really hope that we can get families of our residents to be vaccinated as soon as possible.
Because
probably won't
happen
for
to
several months,
start like
but
reopening the visits and then just putting the whole
Yeah.
isolation behind them.
Yeah, and volunteers and just community members, just because people, I mean, they're stuck in their rooms. They're not able to do bingo even, which is a really big favorite thing
Yeah.
of theirs.
It's just depressing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, all the people who've died alone,
Mm-hmm.
Because of hospitals being shut down and stuff. I think about that and my heart just breaks. And of course, it sort of happened with our family too, because I had 2 great aunts pass away this year.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear
And
that. Kristine.
after COVID. And each of them only had one person in with them at the time. And at least they had somebody.
Yeah.
But I think about how different that is than when my mom passed away last November, where the whole family was there, and we were with her through the entire last week. Practically didn't leave the hospital. Hospice was amazing. And now that's being cut off for so many people. And it makes my heart break. And I'm looking forward to a return to normalcy. So I, too, am really grateful for the vaccines.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty much a miracle the way they've gotten them
it's like,
developed so quickly and tested.
Can't build things anymore. Like we can, like when I look at that, like we managed to give for the vaccine to put the disease away. I mean, like there's still do things.
I admit that I am slightly concerned because I was part of the chickenpox vaccine trial in the 1990s, and that went on for years. So even though I trust the vaccine, it is a little unnerving that we're running a 7 billion person vaccine trial right now. But I think that we kind of face no other option at this point. So much of the world has been shut down and devastated by this disease.
Well, Ian, keep in mind a lot of the reason that those vaccine trials take so long is actually the manpower hours are not all that high on how they're usually run. They aren't extremely well funded. So we've got all these different companies basically turned their entire research and development operations, along with something like 1 in 5 scientific researchers in the country.
Wow.
Went full-time to COVID.
Like all scientific researchers? Not
yes.
Just, wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the United States. It was Britain, Germany, Sweden, France, the Netherlands, all these different countries, and of course China and India and everybody else who had researchers just made it possible. The governments made the money there that said, if you have an idea and it's at all justifiable, run with it. So the manpower hours were phenomenal. And then a lot of the lag time between phases of trials is 100% red tape. So it's sitting around and waiting. You make your submission for what your results were, and then you sit and you wait and you wait and you wait for somebody who is supposed to review it, and they don't and they don't and they don't, because they have like 10,000 other commitments that are more important. And what happened with this vaccine was they made that
more important than this right now.
No.
Well, and the government actually paid to make sure that that was the most important thing, and whatever other duties you had could sit and wait because that was the most important thing. And so that just sped things up phenomenally. They also allowed a lot of trials that would normally be run serially to be run in parallel. And there was no real good justification for them to run these things in serial. It's one of the things that the scientific research community has been complaining about for decades. The way that research and development is regulated in human trials. Some of it was to protect people. Some of it was just the government being horrible. Anytime if you've dealt with anything from building a house and building codes, to environmental regulation, to developing drugs, the government comes up with these huge amounts of rules that supposedly serve some good purpose, and they were well intentioned, but often are implemented with absolutely no bearing on the situation or its efficiency at hand.
I've been know that for certain because, I've been currently working as a software developer in DoD. So, and cybersecurity is a big topic right now. It's sort of we want to know what do you need to do in order to make computers secure. But the way we do it in government is that you have this big checklist of things you have to do. You need to make sure that you have this software installed, this monitor installed, you're keeping these logs, and you're running these tests every so often. But it's just so box checking. It's we put huge amounts of effort into this. But as you can just tell from the recent hack just now, it's oftentimes it doesn't even work because you're checking these boxes. You're not actually doing any of this active hunt or trying to address or root problems that whenever these things do happen. It's just eventually you're just checking boxes, and you're not actually. It's not actually tied to any kind of underlying useful purpose that we want to be completing. So, it's very good at doing some things, keeping a lot of box checkers employed, but not at doing the things we wanted to do. So, it's the same problem, I guess, because, government's really good at telling you have to check all 27 of these boxes in order to proceed, but not at figuring out what we actually want to be doing and ensuring our process is what we need to be doing.
Well, we had an example of that. I think the story broke today about a bunch of micro distilleries who
that was just
they converted their production output from alcohol to hand sanitizer because there was all this worry about hand sanitizer because it was being bought, so it wasn't available, and the production lines were all through China, so of course they were using all their supplies, and then recently they find out that the FDA is slapping them with a $14,000 fine. And a lot of these microbreweries, they donated or sold, they sold at under cost or at a fraction of cost to help this battle against the coronavirus. And the FDA, instead of incentivizing or even just leaving them alone, it's penalizing them with business killing fines. This is just
this kind of worries me because actually one of the ethanol plants near where I live converted from making ethanol to making hand sanitizer in March. So now I'm wondering what's going on with them.
I guess the one bright spot is this actually did make it into the news because now we know this is happening, and then we're starting to wonder, so why do we even actually levy this fund? Suppose this didn't happen during the COVID years, so it just happened because one day a brewery decided to produce hand sanitizer. Why do we do this anyways? Why are we charging people $14,000 to make hand sanitizer? It's so perverse. Or maybe we should just do away with this for good,
Well,
yeah,
the government does that in a lot of things.
reading on the article, it wasn't even specifically about hand sanitizer. It's like a different regulation that they're applying to these people because it falls under the general umbrella of the regulation. But I'm just like,
But
we
they
just
do this
spent-
in everything, right? Home health services, childcare. Well, for crying out loud, here in Minnesota, in order to be a hairdresser, right, you have to go to school for like 2 years.
I mean,
Or a cosmetologist, if you want to paint people's nails, you need to go to school for 2 years just to satisfy the government requirement. Now, I have nothing against a 2-year cosmetology degree. It's fine. And if people want to go see someone who's gone to school for 2 years to be better at that, that's fantastic. But if you think about it, what it is a huge regulatory gateway.
which is
to
like,
keep people
often
out.
put in by like the people who are like, already into business but don't want more people going in. And so it's like, so when like this regulatory capture is like really hard to fight because, we have the people who are really invested in it, and like the people who are already into business who want to keep others out. And everybody else is only like just like a little invested in it. So they don't care too much, or they just don't know, like as was the case with this hand sanitizer thing. But it seems like, like we still have some time, like, and like I feel like there's another guy who said like never let a crisis go to waste. Well, this is a crisis. We could use this to like dismantle most of like the actual regulation we don't need now that the crisis has helpfully identified all of the perverse barriers that shouldn't have existed in the first place. So
Yeah.
I wish I trusted the incoming administration. I mean, one thing that I think I don't actually know where Winston stands on President Trump. I know Kristine and I tend to be fairly negative on our current president, but
like,
I do appreciate.
He does. It's just like I don't like a lot of what he is. It's just like, but he even like him actually like to put it another way, he like didn't realize. There's just one thing he can do well. It's like not letting these crises go to waste, because there are like huge numbers of crises that like we're just like slow boiling because nobody really cared, but you can kind of like in felicitous way just like shine lights on them. Like China was a pretty obvious one. Like obviously like the pre-2015 consensus was like totally wrong, but just by saying like a lot of like whatever came into his head about it, he just like created a crisis that forced a dramatic change, probably for the better in the long run. And there's like a bunch of other areas where this is equally applicable, like say regulation or for
I was going to mention the regulation is one of the things that he instituted was a mandatory repeal of 2 regulations for every regulation added.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we really need like mandatory repeal of 10 regulations for every regulation added. But at least it was a net gain in terms of fewer regulations. But I think
and that said, we're not against regulations to keep the environment clean, or
absolutely,
because we don't want to live on a
safe food,
earth.
Clean air, clean water. That's what we want.
Right. It's just that when you become intimately acquainted with just how many of these there are, you start to understand what the barriers to doing anything that really have very little to do with keeping people safe and have everything to do with following process.
Mm-hmm.
When I was many years ago, I lived in California, and I had a business that I ran at home. And the county wanted to change some of the rules to make it more difficult for us to do business. They had come up with the brilliant proposition that every home-based business could have no more than 10 people trips in and out of it per day. Now, what's a person trip?
Wait,
you ask.
Is there a reason for this? I mean,
yeah, so it wouldn't annoy the neighbors. Well, it turns out every time you, as an individual, crossed your property boundary, that was a person trip. So if you had a family of 4 and you had a home-based business and 1 person employed, suppose you get up in the morning, you get the kids ready for school, your spouse gets ready for work, right? And your spouse takes off in a car, and the 2 kids go out and they catch the bus at the end of the driveway. That's 3 people trips already used up. Now, you decide in the middle of the day, I'm going to go get the mail. You go to the post office and you get the mail because you have a P.O. box because you're a business and you get packages. So you go and you come back. That was 2 people trips. we're up to 5, and your children and your spouse are not even home. 6, 7, 8 brings them home. You have 2 people trips left for the entire day. That means one person can leave and come.
Implied at like, if you operate a business out of your home, you're not allowed to enter or leave your home for more than like 10 times a day. It's like, surely
the cumulative number of people who can enter or leave was 10. And that was insane, right? It was absolutely insane. And we fought against this because it was insane. And I remember they showed us how many regulations they had dealing with the county. Because I went to all the county commissioner meetings and stuff. And they said, 50 years ago, our rule book was 100 pages long. At that time, it was over 18 feet of stacked documents for the county. It was incredible. And this was way back in about 2000. I really don't want to know what's going on now. And that's the way it is for government regulation of so many businesses. That there are regulations upon regulations upon regulations and so many different agencies regulating that a lot of the time, in order to comply with the rules one sets up, you have to violate rules 2 or 3 others set up.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of they have set up an unwinnable situation so they can get rid of people who they think need to be gotten rid of using the justification that some regulation somewhere wasn't followed.
And that's called arbitrary rule.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's not rule of law because the law can't be followed.
Each other and then,
But going back to the vaccine thing, a lot of what happened, and this is thanks to Trump actually, and to his very unique perspective, working with the different researchers and he called in a lot of different stakeholders. He called in manufacturing, he called in transportation, he called in all of the research people, the marketing, the people who were going to be producing, and said, what do we need to get this done? What are the big hangups? What stops things? Where is time wasted, and how can we fix that? And he didn't make a big deal out of it. I mean, everyone knew about Operation Warp Speed, but really they did a bad job explaining to the American public what that meant. Because I think if people knew, they would be seriously impressed and have a lot more confidence in these vaccines.
Indeed, I very much hope so. So, let's see. We're going to be wrapping up in about 5 to 10 minutes here.
should I leave studio or?
No, I think we're going to just try and add more and more people until
Okay.
we end. So we're hoping that Tim can get his mic back online. But yeah, I think that in this coming year, we'll have a lot to do as War Elephants.
At least now we're moving into the loyal opposition then.
Yeah, exactly. I think that we should definitely work on calling balls and strikes, just as we did with President Trump. I think we should very much be interested in, of course, advancing our conservative perspective and finding areas where we can convince liberals that a conservative solution is more practical, which I think is possible. And then also adding just one thing I am concerned about is, even though I am fairly convinced I will very rarely agree with President Biden and Vice President Harris and almost any of his cabinet members, I think there will be times that we should acknowledge certainly their humanity. One of the 3 R's of our core principles of War Elephant being respectful. We should definitely acknowledge when they are trying to be good people. But I think we should also acknowledge when there's sincere disagreement, as opposed to when I would personally consider there's a lot of political grandstanding on both sides, of course. But when they're in power, it's more tempting to point out theirs.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yo, Tim, you got echo.
Maybe. Hang on. My phone is for crap, so I'll be right back.
Okay, so Kristine, what are some things that you want us to look forward to as a community, as War Elephant?
Well, I'm really excited as we're going to be moving into our own website pretty soon. That has me absolutely thrilled. We're looking for a new diversity of our contributors. We have great contributors, but we are looking for more, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes up. I think we'll all be a little relieved because hopefully we won't be on the defensive quite so much. I don't know.
That's one thing. I really hope that President Trump will not be as big a deal in the next year as he has been. Maybe that's wishful thinking. I know he's certainly not going quietly, but
I'm hoping for a reduced temper. Hello. Oh my goodness.
Hey,
I wasn't expecting this.
it's Jaden and Ron.
It is.
And
we brought
somebody
along
else with a Trump hat.
too. Sit up a little bit so we can see you. He watches you guys every week.
Oh, fantastic.
Awesome.
Man, that's Jason.
Hello.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Indeed.
And let me ask you our quick questions that we've asked everyone so far. What were the worst and best things that happened to you personally this year?
That's a good question. Well, I kind of already asked it, or answered this question.
It better be me hiring him.
Yes, that was what happened. I don't really know if I have a worst, honestly. This is, all things considered, been an all-around great year for me. Even though we had,
I've heard that in a long time.
I don't even know. It's been a crazy year, but it's been a great year too. So I really don't have an answer to the worst. So how about you, Ron?
I'm always optimistic. I suppose the worst part was how COVID canceled so much stuff, although I can find the positive in it that we saved a lot of money. On the positive side, it was, even though we came up short on the election end, it was fun running the county party and then a presidential election cycle, and we stayed really busy and we reached the goals we needed to hit, and it was fun doing it. So I guess all in all, it wasn't a bad year.
How about you, Jason? If you want to.
Well, I would say that.
Sit up.
Yeah, sit up so I can see you.
Okay.
Here, I can move.
Stuff right here.
I would say the best thing was I was able to work all through the year, and the worst thing was I wasn't. Well, I guess I wasn't. I didn't go back home to where I come from, so due to the restrictions and stuff, I chose not to get involved in that. So I usually go back 4 or 5 weeks a year out east. So I guess that'd be the worst, but definitely staying employed through the year was a positive thing.
We had him jump on. He watches you guys every week.
Awesome. I'm so glad.
Yeah, it's very good to get the young perspective on things since I'm getting older, unfortunately.
It happens to everyone and it beats the alternative.
Yeah.
That's true, yes.
What, staying young forever is a bad alternative?
Yeah, Tim.
Well, the knowledge you gain over time is good.
But it is good to get a young person's perspective on their ideas and how they think and their thoughts. And it's like someone told me before, there's no future in old people.
That's kind of offensive.
It's very true, though. I mean, it's the way
It depends what business you're in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a friend of mine owns a funeral home, so.
We're in the business of politics, so yeah, it's good to get some young ideas.
Politics is the business of old people. Just look
Well,
at
we
all
actually had
national
a really
congresses.
insightful
Which of us are
comment.
old? We're all in politics and none of us are old.
We had a really insightful comment from one of our liberal members on the Discord today about how a lot of the societal unrest and even economic hardship today is because of the unique situation that we have where a lot of people are able to work productively much longer and have lives that are they don't slow down and become unable to do the job. So we have this enormous generation from the baby boomers who are still able to productively work, and that's really making it difficult to transition the way previous generations transitioned. And so I think that's about to change. I think we're about to have a fairly significant transfer of demographic in the workforce, and that'll be a very interesting thing to look forward to in the next 10 years.
I think one of the other things we're going to see in the
And
workforce.
sadly, Generation X is going to just get skipped over.
Yeah, because the Xers
For
are
the
so
80s.
small. Yeah.
I do think one of the changes you're going to see is the number of people who can work from home. Going to the office is important from time to time, but what COVID forced on us is that we worked from home, and there's upsides and downsides to it. But I think a lot of businesses realize they don't have to pay all this rent on a building for all these people to make them drive into the city every day that can work from their own houses. I think you'd have an office space half the size because you need half the people on any given day. And that's going to be one of the things that come out of 2020, for better or for worse. I think a lot of these skyscrapers in the commercial property industry are going to be struggling for the next few years.
And I hope that it also
Ron,
means more opportunity in the center of the country where there's a lot of need for jobs.
Mm-hmm.
you said that, Ron, and it's interesting because that's one thing that's been talked about a lot for women in the workforce, that one of the big barriers has been the conflict of childcare, which is still done majority-wise by women.
Mm-hmm.
And generally the childbearing years are the early career years, and so this can have a profound impact on your entire career because somebody has to be there.
Yeah.
And so I think with work for home situations, which is something that previously only had mostly been working moms really pushing, I think we might actually see that revolution happen now, just as a integrative all society thing.
Mm.
And I think we learned from Zoom in other forms of social media. We don't all there's something special about the in-person connection, and you need to keep that. But we can do more remotely than I think we realized we could, and that's not all a bad thing. Like, I miss the whole handshaking, backslapping thing because that's me. I like to drink beer and talk to people. But we can do more outside of that, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And like you said, it opens up more, not just female employees, but even guys who have small kids that like to try to be good dads. That if you can do stuff from home and you have a kid and stuff, that's all cool.
Yeah, and I think we'll actually start to see a much more equitable distribution of the workload as well, family-wise, because of this, as these policies are implemented, not as accommodations that one person negotiates for their job, but as industry-wide standards.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking forward to that.
It's definitely changed a lot of things. Like I mentioned, I own a lot of property out east, and all the council meetings out there are on Zoom now. So it's really handy because I can actually raise my hand as a taxpayer
Can I ask a question from Wisconsin?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm hoping that the town council, once they do go back to in person, will keep the Zoom option still open. So that way I don't have to watch the
Wait, hang on a minute. You on the left, are you Steve Sharp?
What? No, he
Are you
is.
Steve?
That's JD.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I only just
yeah.
realized.
But no, I think the Zoom is handy for that. And you know, another thing, I was listening to the New York Times podcast.
The New York Times Daily?
Yeah, and they were talking about funerals. Did you listen to that?
No.
So now, obviously, the way funerals are held now is totally different. But a lot of these people that couldn't normally be a part of it zoom in. It was very interesting.
I think it's going to change the whole economy.
Oh, absolutely. And like what you talk about with the office, and the business meetings and this and that. I mean, it's definitely going to leave an impact for sure.
So how's your
some
New Year's Eve show
for
going?
good, some for bad.
Well, we're about to wrap up because we're at an hour, and all of us have our own families that we're going to be doing our New Year's stuff. But I wanted to sort of get as many people as I could, and I'm really grateful to Winston and Tim and Jaden and Ron and
Christian.
Jason and Christian. Did I miss anybody? I think that's everybody. That's a good chunk of people who came in. So thank you all.
What?
Where's the cat?
Oh,
I have
we showed
sleeping under a bed, I
two
think.
dogs earlier.
Oh,
So we got the animal quotient.
You know, and I put the pillow up for the cat just in case. But no, he's sleeping under the water bed. So.
well, it was
And
nice
I didn't.
to see you guys and say Happy New Year. I enjoyed
Happy
it when
New Year.
a couple weeks ago, and I've been watching you guys most weeks, and I'm glad you guys have Jaden. He's a good guy.
Oh yeah.
Yep, he
We're
is.
glad we
He's
have
one
him
of our
too.
best.
We're glad for all of our team.
The
All
Ed
right,
McMahon
well,
of the war elephant.
Ian, I didn't get to say, because I probably missed it in the Garbled Tech thing, what the best thing that happened to me this year was.
Yeah, I'm curious about that
Yes.
too.
Let's hear it.
So the best thing that happened to me this year was having the unconditional support of my very wonderful boyfriend and my father as I started to explore what new opportunities I'm going to be taking now that I'm no longer doing 24-hour care of my mother. And they gave me time and just, like I said, unconditional support. And that has been amazing. And I'm very
And
thankful.
I think that is wonderful. I mean, I met you online about 6 or so months before your mother passed away, I think. And seeing how your life has changed has definitely been a bright spot. Of course, it hasn't been smooth sailing. Everyone has their ups and downs, but it's been really a pleasure to see all these opportunities open up for you.
And
All
your
right,
support
with
has been incredible too. So thank you.
Well, Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy
Happy
New Year,
New Year.
everyone, from the
Happy
War
New Year.
Elephant to all of you. And I hope to see all of you again in next year, which will be in just
2021.
2 hours.
4 hours for us.
Mm-hmm.
Wrong. It's the next
4 hours
decade.
here.
What's this guy?
It's the next decade, okay? We can have
Bye,
the whole
guys.
semantic argument about what is what, but it's the
All
next
right.
decade.
Uh-huh.
In the next decade,
Hopefully
next
it's
year
better
in
than the last
Jerusalem,
one.
all that stuff. Have
Bye.
a wonderful end of 2020.
Happy